Now I want to turn to Boeing, because I had asked, could I give a little talk on this? Because Comrade Jim McMahon of Seattle, he wrote an article for this week's Workers' World about how on November 13th, the workers at Boeing out near Seattle had stood up to the company, and they rejected a proposed new contract by 2-1. So what was involved in this? Now, first of all, this proposed contract was actually meant to be an 8-year extension of the current contract, which doesn't expire until 2016. Boeing presented it as that it would be a guarantee that the workers would get jobs over that period of time, building a plane called the 777X. In exchange for this presumed guarantee of work, they wanted the workers to accept some very ugly givebacks. First, a big increase, about 30%, in the cost of their health care. Second, converting their current pension plan with its defined benefits into an iffy 401k. Third, raising the time it would take for a new hire to reach the highest pay grade from 6 years to 16 years. And they don't make, they're better paid workers than, the average workers in the United States. But the new entry workers at Boeing don't make that much. They don't make any fabulous amounts of money. After they've worked there for 16 years, they get a better salary. So under this proposal, 16 years. Now it's 6 years. Then, what about pay? This proposal was that the workers, this is like, worse than nothing. The workers would get a 1% pay rise every other year during the whole 8 years. Only every other year they would get 1%. And that they would have to make a no-strike pledge that would last until 2024. So, but then you see, after this horrible contract offer, they thought they would combine the carrot with the stick. So they offered the workers a $10,000 signing bonus. Sign this, we give you $10,000. And they threatened that if the workers didn't sign it, they would move the 777X elsewhere and have it worked on in some other non-union place. Well, before the vote that took place, the Boeing workers carried out a tremendous no campaign. They marched through the plants shouting, no, 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 no. They carried out rallies outside. By the time it came to the actual vote, even the leadership, the union leadership that had negotiated this deal with the bosses, had to submit it to the members with no recommendation on how they should vote. Well, 31,000 workers participated in this vote, and more than 21,000 of them said no. So they defeated it. And there were quotes from some of the workers. One of them said, if we accept this, Boeing is going to roll over us and break this union. Anytime they say jump, we'll have to say how high. So the company was pretty stunned. See, they thought they had the workers over a barrel. They had already got, this is their, the chutzpah here, they had already got the state to agree to an $8.7 billion tax cut for them that would be spread over the years of the contract. And they don't pay very much in taxes to begin with, by the way. In exchange, they were getting this money that was supposed to be exchanged for them keeping the Boeing, the 777X in Everett, Washington, which is about 28 miles north of Seattle. It's quite close to Seattle. And now it was raising the threat again that they would move the work somewhere else, where there would be no union that they'd have to deal with. Well, comrades, as of now, it appears that their strategy is backfiring on Boeing, and I'll explain why. First of all, workers everywhere, not just at Boeing, are incensed that this company, which is so rich, is trying to force down wages and benefits. They're wildly profitable. The earnings of Boeing this year, that's their profits now, are predicted at close to $6 billion on sales of $85 billion. Their net income rose by 12% in the third quarter of this year. They have $400 billion in backlogged orders for their planes. And just last weekend, the company got another $100 billion in orders for the 777X at the Dubai Air Show. So they want to rip up the workers' pension plan and make them pay heavily for health insurance and, in effect, lower their wages while all this money is pouring in. So they want the workers to think they're vulnerable and that they can get the work done elsewhere. But the workers disagree, and so do a lot of bourgeois analysts of the industry. For example, the director of the Economic Opportunity Institute in Seattle thinks that the company is shooting themselves in the foot with this. He points out that Boeing did outsource a lot of their parts production in 2003 after they got a $4 billion tax reduction from the state of Washington. The company used some of that $4 billion to build a non-union facility in South Carolina where parts were made. And it used another $1 billion to contract out parts making to various other places around the world. But what happened? When the parts got back to Everett to be assembled in the 787 plane, a lot of them didn't fit. A Boeing plane has 3 million parts. Quality control is a huge dimension in the production of such a complicated machine. Machinists in Everett had to rejigger these parts that came back in order to make them fit into the plane. And when the planes were finally ready for delivery, they were $14 billion over budget and several years late. So even Boeing's customers now are telling them to stay put and keep the 777X in Everett, where the workers who are skilled at this will know how to fix, how to build these parts. Here's a quote from the CEO of Emirates, which is a company, I assume, that's based in the United Arab Emirates. He said, all we said to Boeing was, please don't do to 77X what you did to the 787. Don't do that to us. The head of Qatar Airways, the chief executive, Akbar Al-Akbar, and Qatar Airways is the second largest 777X purchaser, said, frankly, we would rather everything was built in one place. And I think Boeing, from the 787 experience, have learned a lesson. Well, plus, the other thing going for the Boeing workers is that they still have 3 years to go on their present contract, which is legal and binding on the company, because this offer was supposed to be an extension on that contract. So this is why the machinists were confident that they could stand up to this huge corporation and reject the contract. And they have a lot of support in the state of Washington. Just this Monday, a big rally was held in Seattle. AFSCME was there. So were the United Food and Commercial Workers and other unions. It was called by the state AFL-CIO. The same leaders of the machinists who had negotiated this bad contract extension were there applauding the workers for rejecting it. So you can see the dynamic behind this struggle. Now I want to read something else to you. Also speaking at the rally, according to the Washington Examiner, which is one of the big papers there, was a young woman who identifies herself as a socialist. She is from India. Her name is Kwama Shawant. She ran for city council recently on a campaign centered around demanding a $15 minimum wage. And she got elected with 88,000 votes. And here's what she said to the rally. She said that if Boeing continued to threaten to move their jobs, quote, the workers should take over the factories and shut down Boeing's profit-making machine. She added that the managers at Boeing were economic terrorists for warning that they might move production to other states if the union members held out. And she said, the only response we can have if Boeing executives do not agree to keep the plant here is for the machinists to say the machines are here, the workers are here, we will do the job, we don't need the executives. The executives don't do the work, the machinists do. Now, she's in another political tendency, but I'll tell you, this was a great talk. And what was the workers' reaction? Well, I don't think she was booed by them at all, or the reporter would have written about it. She probably got some big cheers from the workers. All the solidarity with these workers is very impressive. Now, they generally earn more money than a lot of the workers who came out to support them. They're no doubt inspired by the struggles of the lower paid workers. We can't predict what the outcome of this struggle will be, but so far the workers have taken the offensive, and the union leadership has to accept that. When I proposed a title for this talk and it went out on the email, there were a couple of comrades who didn't like the wording of calling these better paid workers. And they said, and called me up about it, and they said that they thought that was divisive. And I disagree with that, and I want to explain why. I think we need to assess our class objectively. Our class is not homogeneous, not at all. Some get higher wages, usually because they fought for them. Maybe they also have a lot of skills. Others get less than minimum wage. We recognize this. We've had books written about the low-wage workers and how high-tech. This is Comrade Sam wrote his book, High Tech, Low Pay. How the introduction of high tech is forcing down the wages of the higher-paid workers, and he saw in that the germ of greater solidarity between all sections of the working class. But we have, in our working class in this country, there are many oppressed nations, and there are people from the oppressor nation. There are women and men, and women and men are generally treated differently by the bosses, and women have been fighting for things like pay equity. There are gay and straight workers. Gay workers are discriminated against. There are immigrants and people who are born here. And among the immigrants, there are those who are documented, and then there are those who are not documented. And we need to know what's happening in each sector of the working class. Does the struggle of one group inspire another? What can be done to build solidarity? That's what we are focused on. We want to know how to build solidarity while recognizing the distinctions that exist and finding ways and strategies to unite the workers. And I think that that's what's happening in Seattle right now, is that kind of a struggle is going on. And let us not forget about Seattle, the Battle of Seattle against the World Trade Organization. What was that, 20 years ago?
No, 14 years ago.
14 years ago? Oh, it seems longer.
Seattle General Strike.
And the Seattle General Strike, that's just what I was going to say. That general strike that took place in Seattle in 1919. It has a strong history of working class resistance, and it looks good what's going on there right now with these workers.